Trying to get some water, hydration.
That's the key.
So we have 25-ish, 30 plants on the farm, trees, if you will, of cacao. The fruit that Marc here has harvested and is processing has been flowering since probably early summer, midsummer. So it's a whole 6 months of, from germination to actually harvest of getting the chance to try this true superfood. Marc can tell you a little bit about his process, and he's one with cacao on a regular basis this time of year.
So I'm even matching today.
Matching
Right?
colors.
It's important to match the food.
I got a little cacao in me.
Oh yeah, dude. Between you're actually even closer there.
Yeah. So and one of the cool things about this color, when you talk about nutrition, vitamins and minerals, people really want to relate so much science to it, but we know some of you have heard of the rainbow diet. This is, you cannot find these colors in the rainbow diet, outside of this plant. So certainly a value when it comes to nutrition. I view this color as a big sign of magnesium and manganese, which are kind of the true, just like gold in the garden is that manganese.
Mm-hmm. And the healthy fats too. It's like when I'm processing this cacao, we destem each of the stems from the beans themselves, and so this is like covered in fat. I mean, my hands will be completely covered in cacao butter, basically. And so you're getting these really deep fats for the body. You're getting a lot of micronutrients, and even on a cellular level of the skin, how resistant to mold the skin is and mildew. And I can't say enough good things about that as well.
Just on the fats again. So certainly for plant-based diets, those fats, those fatty oils, so important. I don't really focus my diet around protein. I focus my diet around trying to find the fatty oils. Mm-hmm. And this, one of the foods of the gods. This just truly is, when you think about avocados, mac nuts, coconuts, I definitely rank cacao in there as one that you can receive those fatty oils from and be able to build muscle mass from, be able to draw from when the resources are low. And then also as it relates to skin and beauty, I like to take these fatty oils here and kind of get my skin going a little bit from it, because it doesn't, if you think about where they make butters out of, veggie butters, so you have coconut butter, you have nut butters, right? And then one of the ultra luxe butters is the cacao butter. And that cacao butter is basically pressing the oils out of the beans as well as the skin. And this is fresh cacao oil or cacao butter, however you want to term it.
Anti-aging at its finest.
Anti-aging at its finest. True youth serum.
Yeah, for real.
And internally, same thing. I mean, it's as far as receiving something that has, it's a true superfood in that it has fats, carbohydrates, and protein. A few beans kind of does the body good. And when it comes to cacao, certainly this is one of those plants that, not all cacao is created equal. When our cacao hits the mainland, I would classify it as the most raw, if you will, given that our dryers kind of sit in the 105 degree range. The most raw cacao, it takes us over a week to cure our cacao. We don't ferment it, which also brings the sugars out. So we're just going right from tree to the dehydrators and right to the tea or the superfood or the bag, however it's packaged, but it's very raw and super fresh when it does leave this farm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
Can you, Mark, take us a little bit through your process here of cutting and what you're trying to do?
Yeah, certainly. So when I'll get a whole cacao pod, and I'll grab this one over here, even though I'll just show. I won't cut into this, but it's so this pod,
Little baby one.
yeah, this is just a baby. Generally, I mean, you can see this is like a quarter of one pod. So this pod, particularly, was like this large, maybe almost a foot, 8 inches long. And so what I'll do is I'll cut into the pod itself, and then I'm going to just pull out the bean and kind of fill up this bowl, and then de-stem it, which is the pile of stems here, which have a really amazing nutritional value. However, we are only using the bean, and we actually recompost this, and then with the shells themselves, there's a specific pollinator, a type of fly that pollinates the cacao flowers. They're tiny, tiny, really delicate flowers on the trees, and the fly actually eats the skin of the cacao and repollinates the tree itself. And so, yeah, we will redistribute back under the tree that this came from, or trees that are flowering.
So certainly, like all trees, they like to eat what they throw off, and the cacao specifically, you know, if you're exporting all the pods and they're leaving the land, it's really hard for those cacao to keep up with vitamins and minerals like magnesium in the garden, because it's such a jewel that the cacao does extract from the land, that you got to make sure that you do put it back into the land so that it can replenish itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's key.
Yeah, I mean, there's reasons why the plants drop the leaves underneath themselves, you know, to protect the fruit, or, you know, to give themselves nutrients, right, to replenish their own nutrient value.
So Mark, could you tell me, so Mark is certainly experienced with feeling the cacao as I am. We both love to consume cacao, specifically from here,
Yes.
from these gardens. What do you love so much about the cacao?
The cacao is one of my favorite crops. I am guilty of eating a whole pod for lunch multiple times. Cacao to me is the bringer of joy. When we have cacao in here, if we get an abundant harvest, everyone will come in here as one of us is processing, or two of us are processing the cacao, and it's well, I mean, it definitely increases endorphin levels in the body, serotonin. It releases all these joyous hormones, basically, and even the taste, the texture, everything about it is loving, sensual, uplifting. So I love all of those things in my life.
Yeah. You know, the people talk about the heart opener cacao is. So,
absolutely, yeah.
you know, in our culture, I think people even have a hard time understanding what that means. And it's one of the reasons why it's so nice to connect with the plants, because they speak the truth, or they bring the truth out in us. Mm-hmm. And cacao is one of those, when you do find the source that we have here, cacao is one of those that brings that joy, endorphins, brings all that to the surface. Mm-hmm. And at times, you know, I find myself maybe trying to suppress some of those things, even though they're hanging out right there. Mm-hmm. And when we do tap into a plant that's this powerful, it's just like, it's so instantaneous. And then it stays with you through the day, even into the evening, when you kind of look at yourself, wow, I'm still kind of revved up, and yet you don't find that kind of caffeine high, or it's not really a high, it's more of a sustained, kind of a longevity type ignition to your energy levels.
Absolutely. So it will uplift the entire room.
So with the bean itself, there is this sweet fruit around it. You have another name for that other than sweet fruit? Kind of this flesh if you will. And then inside the flesh is a little bit more bitter bean.
Yep.
And that bean is kind of what brings out this, that's that purple, red magnesium, manganese.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, a lot of the bitterness, the medicine is in that bitterness.
Absolutely.
But it's got that sweet bitterness to it. Yeah. And it's that balance that is so authentic to cacao. There's nothing that I could compare the flavor, the taste, the experience, the texture. There's no fruit, there's no food that comes to mind as any comparison to the cacao pod.
You are getting the sweet, you're getting the fruit, you're getting the juice, and you're getting that bitter balance kind of hit, which is, it's nice to get bitter in the diet, but it's not easy to get bitter because I think we, as a especially American society, we don't like bitter. We don't necessarily love sour, but bitter is, it's a sign, it's a liver tonic, and most bitter herbs, bitter roots, really help the liver, help the stomach. It's really grounding. So it's really important to get these bitters in, but the cacao kind of like disguises the bitter with this really sweet flesh. And then there's also another kind of byproduct that will be at the bottom of this bowl, but it's known as miel de cacao, and it's kind of part of the fermentation process. And our beans will ferment really for a very short period of time while they dehydrate, but you can see there's just this really beautiful juice at the bottom. It's called miel de cacao. And occasionally, if we process a lot of that cacao, we can juice these stems, and that is the elixir of the gods. All right, so this is one of the processes of the cacao bean after we actually get it from the pod. And so firstly, I'm just going to show you a tray of beans that has been dried over the last 3 or 4 days. I think we put this in on Monday, and it's Friday today. And so these are beans that are probably like 80% dehydrated. And I do that just by, I'll take a bean and I'll actually like feel the skin and kind of crack it and break it. And you can see that the nibs are falling apart, but I just feel with my hands and I can kind of hear that this is not completely done. It just needs a little more time. So this is gonna stay in over the weekend. Generally, because it's the wet season here on Kauai, this is gonna stay in about a week in our solar dehydrators. So we kind of move the beans around and then we'll get them back in the dehydrator here. And so this is the freshy fresh. This is the goods. And what I'm gonna do is just try to create space on the tray for these cacao beans. So I'm gonna bring them all in and just make sure that there's plenty of airflow to come through the trays, because our dehydrators get pretty full during the day, and we definitely want to make sure that there's plenty of airflow because we're working with a passive solar system. And so I'm just gonna fill this whole entire tray up as is. So we use the cacao in Cacao Olena, which is one of our really amazing superfood powders. It's kind of similar to, totally blanking on the...
Golden milk?
Golden milk, yeah, it's our golden milk. And it's normally golden milk doesn't have cacao in it, but ours does, and that's what really makes it special. If you want to make a golden milk with Cacao Olena, it's really, really nice. We also put it in our love potion and our endurance powder. The love potion is a tea, which is really sweet to get some cacao in your daily regimen of tea. We also have ashwagandha in there, so you're kind of getting like, especially if you drink it daily, you're getting a tonic dose of really vital minerals through the cacao. You're gonna boost your endorphin levels. You're releasing serotonin with the cacao in your body, and so drinking the love potion, you'll definitely feel the love. And that's really what cacao is good for. It's feeling the love.